So, you've bought a handful of models and you want to build an Age of Sigmar army. In this video, I'm going to focus on the foundations of building a legal match play list and some considerations when selecting the units for battle. G'day hobbyists, Anthony from AOS Coach here, bringing you the strategies and techniques to help you hit your peak gaming performance. So if you're new to Age of Sigmar, one of the first challenges you'll face is how do I bring my models into a workable and coherent force? Well, list building is a very important part to any tabletop wargame and a skill you're going to need to develop over time. Learning how to build a list will help you make the right purchasing decisions and help you avoid models you won't need in the future. It'll help you scale up the battle and tweak your army to face some of the most common armies, as well as improve your win rates. So how do you build the right foundations in building an Age of Sigmar army? Assembling an army under match play is a little bit more complex than just putting your models on the table under the open play framework. It's really about giving you an option to fight one-on-one or one-on-many with a very similar power level. It's about you pre-arranging your army and saying, hey, do you want to play 2,000 point game or do you want to play 2,000 points worth of models? And how you build your army within that framework is completely up to you. Yes, there are some restrictions and some guidelines you must adhere to, but ultimately, if you want to bring a couple of high-powered models and, you know, really risk being overrun by someone who brings a lot more models that on the table, or maybe you want to bring more wizards and less, you know, cavalry or more cavalry and less troops. It's completely up to you. But when I get to the table, we have a relatively fair and agreed framework. This is perfect if I want to play at my friend's house and I don't want to bring my whole collection with me. It's wonderful when I go to a tournament because we all have a very similar framework. But it also could be really good for a quick game. I go down to my local games workshop and say, hey, who's free for 1,500 points? And straight away we know what models and how we're going to play. So within the match play framework, we've got a couple of different options. And within these options, whether it's Vanguard, Battle Host, or War Host, will depend on the types of troops that I can bring to the table, but also some minimum requirements and also some maximum requirements. It's also a great guideline to say, well, if we were to play 2,000 points, we're probably looking at about 2 to 2.5 hours worth of gameplay. And if I am going to play 2,000 points, and this is one of the most common size for battle, we're going to bring at least 3 battle line. So they're your standard troops, whether it might be your regular humans with swords and shields, whether it might be some chaos warriors, some undead skeletons. You know, these are your standard troops. I'm allowed to bring some potential big monsters, and I'm allowed under the 2,000 points, you know, up to 4 big monsters. Obviously, you know, if a monster's worth 600 points, then I definitely can't bring 4 of them. But also I might bring some allies in. So, and we'll get to allies a little bit later. But really, this is a framework for you to pick up very easily and play a game. So you've picked your battle size. It's now time to pick troops. Now, when you pick troops under match play, it's all based on an allegiance. Now, the allegiance could be a Grand Alliance, and consider a Grand Alliance like an umbrella. The umbrella of Grand Alliance order, under that umbrella would be Free People, Dispossessed, Wanderers, Sylvaneth, Daughters of Cain, Kharadron Overlords, etc., etc., etc. So if I was to go Grand Alliance order, I can pick whatever models from those ranges, and it doesn't matter so long as that I meet that previous requirement of battle line and behemoths and points. However, if I want a more thematic or themed based army where I'm saying, well, you know, I only want to take Daughters of Cain units, or, you know, I really just want to have Nurgle. I don't want Tzeentch, I don't want Khorne, I just want the Maggotkin of Nurgle. You can swear a faction allegiance, and, you know, examples of these are Free People, Daughters of Cain, Maggotkin, Flesh Eater Courts, Ironjaws, etc. Now, there are pros and cons on swearing Grand Alliance allegiance and factions, and really the pros and cons majoritively sit under the allegiance abilities. So by picking a Grand Alliance order, I'm going to get additional benefits such as a battle trait, a command trait, artifacts of power. Now, this will all start making sense as you review your General's Handbook and your battle tomes, and, we'll dig a little bit deeper in a second. But, assuming you've got those 2 books, and if you don't have those 2 books, I'd highly recommend going and getting those books. These are different rules and different abilities that are very much themed around your army. Whether it might be within the stories, whether it might be something that fits your army a bit more. Maybe it's something that Marathi has created in the, to support the Daughters of Cain and their thirst for blood that wouldn't actually normally fit the Stormcast Eternals. So, you will need to dig a little bit deeper, and there are different options. There are, for some things, there might be 6 artifacts you could choose from. But I would only get those artifacts if I've sworn allegiance to, again, Order or Daughters of Cain, as an example. So I want to start building my army list, and my centerpiece model is going to be the Free Guild General on Griffin. It's something that I definitely want on my table, and everything that I want has to work around it. So the way we go about doing this is through the keywords, and at the bottom of the WARSCROLL, you can find these WARSCROLLs either on the smartphone app for Age of Sigmar, on the GW website. Every unit should have their WARSCROLL there. But you'll see at the bottom of the page, it has the keywords. And in this example, my Griffin has my Free Guild General on Griffin has the keyword of Griffin, Human, Monster, Hero, Order, Free People, Free Guild General. Technically, I could choose any of these keywords to be an allegiance, and that means that everything that I choose must have, let's say I swear allegiance to Monster, everything must be a monster. My battle line has to be a monster, everything has to be a monster, but also has to be within Order. I could not, for example, choose this Free Guild General under a Destruction or a Death or a Chaos alliance, because he does not have Chaos, Death, or Destruction as one of his keywords. He is only Order, so he must be in an Order or a Free People army. These 2 particular examples are the only ones that I actually get a benefit by swearing allegiance to. So if I looked at my General's Handbook and I swear allegiance to Order, one of the benefits, and this is only one of the benefits I would get is something called Define Avengers, which allows me to re-roll Battle Shock tests for friendly Order units in the Battle Shock phase. Now that's pretty sweet. Especially if I've got big troops, they're holding an objective, I don't want to lose them. Re-rolling that Battle Shock could actually be really helpful. If I was to swear allegiance instead to the Free People, I would get a Define Avenger, which allows me to re-roll Battle Shock tests for Free People units, and I would get this additional Free Guild General, a great company ability, which allows me to combine a series of units after deployment, and they would get some benefits that, you can look in your own General's Handbook to see what those benefits are. Now, you might be looking at this going, well, why wouldn't I just pick Free People? I get 2 rules, not 1. This is only a snippet of what you get. We haven't looked at artifacts. We haven't looked at any potential additional spells that you get. We haven't looked at any additional setup rules. So there's a lot to take in to see, where I swear my allegiance to. So we start to build this list, and we want to go, well, who else works well with my Free Guild General on Griffin? Let's say I want to swear allegiance to the Free People. So I turn my battle tome or my General's Handbook over, and I see a table that looks like this. And it's going to have the units. So, I've got my Free Guild Guard. And then it says, well, what's the minimum amount of models that I must have in this unit? So the unit size here, it says I've got to have at least 10 Free Guild Guard. And that's going to cost me 80 points. So of my 2,000, 1,000 point army, it's going to cost 80 points for every 10. So if I want 20 of these guard, we're looking at 160 points. However, if I take a maximum, so if I take the 40, for the math whiz on the line, if you did 4 times 80, you would not get 280 points. You would actually get 320. What's happening here? So for anything that has a slash, so in this example, the guard and the greatswords have a slash. That means that there's something called, this is a benefit. This is a discount. It's called mass regiments. So what it's saying is that I could take 40 free guild guard and it would only cost me 280, not the 320. The role that it plays is battle line. So by selecting the free guild guard, it is going to meet my requirement of a battle line. So I would have to take 3 of these guard to match the 2,000 points, or maybe I take a crossbowman and an archer and a guard. If I took 20 models, that would only be 1 battle line unless I split them out to be two units of 10. You'll notice that the free guild general on Griffin has two roles. It is both a leader and a behemoth. So what that's saying is that of my 4, of my 6, whatever my choices are, it would take up a slot in both of them. So you'll have to be careful when you're building your lists. If I was taking Grand Alliance Order, I could take any of these units without a problem. However, one of the additional benefits by going specific to the free people is that I would get, I could choose my Demigryph Knights or my Free Guild Greatswords to be a battle line option because I've sworn allegiance to free people. If I was Grand Alliance Order, I would not get that. So again, this might be another option on, where do I go? However, I'll get to the allies in a second, and this will be another separator between do I go Order or do I go free people. But we've also got something called the WARSCROLL Battalion. Now, the WARSCROLL Battalion isn't a unit. So you'll notice that there is no minimum, there is no maximum. It's not actually a unit. What it is a set of rules, and it's very specific to the certain units within the WARSCROLL. So every WARSCROLL Battalion has a very different setup. So it might say you need to take a general, at least 2 units of guard, a unit of crossbowmen, a unit of handgunners. I must have these units. If I meet that criteria, I can take the Free Guild Regiment, and the Free Guild Regiment would give me additional benefits X, Y, and Z. On top of that, I've got these allies. So we talked earlier about, I can have 400 points worth of allies in a 2,000 point game. Now, under Grand Alliance Order, Destruction, Death, Chaos, there are no allies. You can pick anything from the umbrella, no issues. But if I was going to go free people, it means that my whole 2,000 points must be spent either on free people, Collegiate Arcane, Devoted of Sigmar, Iron-Wheeled Arsenal, or Stormcast Eternal. And if I do go into the Devoteds, the Stormcast, I'm only allowed a maximum of 400 points in a 2,000 point army. So all of a sudden, it's restricted my choices when I'm building my force. Now, this might not be a restriction. You might be happy and go, cool, all I need is the Celestial Hurricanum from the Collegiate Arcane. That's all I need in my army. I'm happy. But if you wanted to run, a volley gun, you wanted to run a unit of Liberators from Stormcast, maybe you wanted to run a Lawmaster from the Eldritch Council, you might find these restrictions might be too much and you can't do free people. You have to go Grand Alliance Order. So if I was to build a 2,000 point army, an example of this might be, I've gone out and I've selected a Luminarch of Haish, which is an ally from the Collegiate Arcane. I've also drawn from the Stormcast Eternals to have a Knight of Xeros. I've got my Free Guild General. I've got one on foot, and I've got 2 Griffins. So you can see here I've actually got 2 Griffins, Free Guild General and Griffin. There's another Free Guild General and Griffin. Both of them have Shield and Great Hammer, and one of them have taken an artifact called the Armor of Meteoric Iron. That is specific to the free people. It's not available to Order. If I go free people Allegiance, I can't take from the Order artifacts, and vice versa. Order could not take from free people. So again, this might dictate which way you go. I've gone out and got some battle lines. So both the Demigryph Knights, the Guard, the Crossbowmen, the Handgunners are all coming in as large units, or the Free Guild Guard, Crossbowmen, and Handgunners are all large units. And you can see at the bottom that I've used 1,980 points of the 2,000. So I'm going to be leaving 20 points on the table. There's nothing of 20 points worth of value. So that's the best way I can optimize my list. And of the 400 points worth of allies I could choose, I have taken 320 points. I could take an additional 80 points, but that means I'd have to sacrifice something somewhere in order to get that additional unit from somewhere else. So how did I compile this list? What's the best way of compiling a list? Well, I could do this on a notepad and pen, and then I hand it to my opponent, and hopefully they can read my scribbles. Or I could use a free tool that Games Workshop's put together called WARSCROLL Builder. So we're in WARSCROLL Builder, and I'm going to start off by choosing my Grand Alliance, which is Order. Now, the faction that we're going to be playing is going to be the Free People, so this is where you can find the different units that fit in the different factions. On the right-hand side is where we choose our allegiance, whether it be Order, Daughters of Cain, Free People, Fire Slayers, etc., etc. So we're going to go for a Free People instead of a Order, so we're going to pick Free People. And then we're going to start the army building process. So first off, going to find the majority of our army, which is Free People. So it starts off with our leader. Our leader was a Free Guild General. It is, in fact, our general. That's going to be the general of our army. Then there's a couple of different drop boxes. So what is the command trait that we're going to give our general? And if you remember, we chose Indomitable. The weapon we're going to go with is the Stately War Banner. And this is where we choose artifacts. Now, I'm not going to be giving my one and only artifact to this particular general, so we will leave it as none. We also had 2 other Free Guild Generals on Griffin, so we're going to put that together. Now, notice that there are a couple of different options. I can go with the different weapon options, so we'll go with Shield and Great Hammer because that's what I chose based on the strength of the hits into wounds. But we did have one of the generals with the armor of Meteoric Iron. So we're going to pop that artifact on one of the generals. If I need to rename someone, I can actually change the text here. I can also delete if I need to delete, or I can copy. So instead of me going back, forth, I could have actually recreated and copied it into the army list. You'll notice here how many wounds the model has, or the unit has, and then how many points. This is 100, 260, 260. We're going to continue along and put our units in. So we had a block of Demigryph Knights. We're going to have a unit of Guard. We're going to have some handgunners, and we're going to have some crossbowmen. Now, unfortunately, we are only looking at 10 models in this unit, so we need to bump them up to the respective 40 and the respective 30s. So now we've got our 3 Demigryph Knights, our 40 Guard, our 30 Handgunners, our 30 Crossbowmen. Now, if I need to move these around, maybe you like them ordered in a certain way, I can move them. Maybe I want to move my pure battle line first. Maybe I want to hide my Handgunners for some reason, but I can move these around. If I had chosen a Branch Witch and I'm looking for it to summon, I'm not Sylvaneth Allegiance, so I don't get free Wildwoods, I have to pay for them. There are the options as well to pick the Wildwoods, so if I needed to do that, the option is there. The option for my battalion as well, if you remember the Free Guild Regiment, if I wanted to choose a battalion, that would be 200 points, and you would add that to your list. You notice at the bottom here, we also have the total wound count, which is at the moment 143 wounds total for my army. And we're using currently 1,660 points of the 2,000. If we're playing a larger or smaller battle, we could alter this. So we could change this to 1,500 points, whatever it might be. And if you're an army who might be summoning, maybe you want to summon a Balewind Vortex, instead of listing the Balewind Vortex in your army, you actually just have to put in your reinforcement points, and this is where I could add my 100 points for reinforcements. Now, if you remember, I had a series of allies, so for me to get my allies in, I'm going to move over to my Collegiate Arcane, go to my leaders slot and choose the Luminarch. The Luminarch was 240. Now, it was an ally of mine, so I'm going to select that as an ally. I'm now going to add my Stormcast ally, which was the Knight Azeros. And if you look now, if you remember the last slide, we were at 1980, and this is exactly where it is. I can see how many leaders I have, so in my 2,000 points, I've got 5 out of 6. I've got 4 out of my 3 minimum battle line. I've got 3 out of 4 behemoths. I have no artillery, and there is my 240 worth of points in the ally section. Although that tells me that I haven't actually chosen my Knight Azeros. Move that over to ally. We're now at the proper 320. When I want to export this, I can either hover over the army text, and if I'm going to send to my friend and say, hey, Mr. Friend, I want you to look at my army list and give me some feedback, I could just copy the text short or full. Great for sharing on Twitter and on Facebook. However, when you want to actually export it and maybe print it off or send it to your tournament organizer, there is an option here to save as PDF. You obviously name it, you change the titles, and what's going to happen then is it comes up with a wonderful PDF that has everything laid out perfectly for you, ready to send to your TO. You might want to consider when you're looking at your army. Do you have models and units that could take an objective, and could they hold the objective? You might have, 3 really hard-hitting, Dracoths, but can they actually hold the objective, or would you want them to hold the objective for 5 rounds? Do you have really strong heroes that could take damage? A free guild general on a griffin, on a horse, only has 5 wounds, but one on a griffin definitely has like 13 wounds. So some scenarios like duality of death requires a hero. So maybe I want to have one of those 10 wound or more heroes in my army. Do I have any ranged threats? If I've got an opponent who has a wizard at the back of the board, how can I get to that wizard if he's got really strong combat? Do I have any ranged threats? Can I snipe things out? But equally, could I actually have a good arm wrestle in close combat? So do I have some close combat attack, or am I relying shoot my army off the board, and if I get into combat, I'm in deep trouble? Do I have speed and mobility? Can I get an objective that's right at the back of the army? If there's danger that happens on one side of the board, do I have the speed to get my army from one side of the board to another? Do I have attack both magically, but also can I defend it? If you play up against a Tzeentch army, or anyone with wizards, could you attempt to dispel, or are they going to run riot on you? So maybe finding some spellcasters and some wizards would actually benefit. How many drops does your army have? So, reducing the amount of drops will give you a better chance of choosing who goes first in the first battle round. That might be important to you, especially if you're a close combat army. Daughters of Cain, Blades of Khorne, you want to be in combat ASAP. So maybe you want to be going for first in the first turn. So, reducing the amount of drops would actually be really beneficial. And then finally is unit synergy. So, Unit A, let's say Free Guild Greatswords, they're pretty good. They have 2 attacks. They've got a pretty good to hit to wound. But if they're close to a Free Guild General, they'll actually the to wound roll is actually a lot better. They actually get a +1 or a +2. They get some benefit between the two if they're within a certain distance. So all of a sudden I've made a unit that's good, great. So, what are the synergies? How can I find units that work together that make them even better than they would be on their own? So there's some things that you might want to consider when you're building your list. To summarize what we've gone through, check the minimum and maximum requirements in the types of battles that you want to play. 2,000 points is a very common battle size, however, it will vary between opponents and the events that you attend. Once you pick a battle size, you will need to pick an allegiance, whether it's a Grand Alliance or something that's more specific to a faction, like Free People, Flesh Eater Courts, Iron Jaws. There are pros and cons on either side, so check the abilities and the benefits. Your general handbook and your battle tomes will provide you the points and the abilities that you'll need, and to build the list, the WARSCROLL Builder tool that's available on the Warhammer community page is a wonderful asset. So my question to you is, what are the most important features that you build into your lists? Leave your comments in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you've built up. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed and you are interested in future Age of Sigmar content, give us a subscribe. Until next time, happy wargaming.